December 16th, 1944. 5:30 in the morning. The Ardennes Forest, Belgium. American soldiers huddle in foxholes along an 85-mile front, stretching from southern Belgium through Luxembourg. The forest is dark. Snow covers the ground. The temperature hovers just above 0 degrees Fahrenheit. These are green troops, fresh replacements who have never seen combat, and battle-weary veterans, exhausted divisions pulled from the front lines to rest and refit in what everyone believes is the quietest sector of the entire Western Front, the Ardennes. Dense forest, narrow roads, steep hills, terrain that every Allied commander, from General Dwight Eisenhower on down, believes is impassable for armored formations. The same forest the Germans stormed through in 1940, but that was different. That was surprise. That was lightning war. That was before the Germans lost millions of men fighting the Soviets, before they lost the Battle of Normandy, before they retreated across France with the Allies snapping at their heels. By December 1944, everyone knows Germany is beaten. The Russians are closing in from the east. The Americans, British, and Canadians are massed on the German border in the west. Berlin will fall. The war will end. It is just a matter of time, months maybe, weeks if things break right. In the foxholes, American soldiers are thinking about Christmas, 9 days away. Some have packages from home, letters, photos of sweethearts and families. They smoke cigarettes, they play cards, they grumble about the cold and the terrible coffee, and when they will get to rotate back to a rear area with hot showers and real beds. They do not know that 400 yards away, hidden in the trees on the other side of no man's land, 250,000 German soldiers are waiting in the darkness. 29 divisions, over 1,000 tanks, 1,600 artillery pieces, the largest concentration of German military power on the Western Front since D-Day. All of them silent, all of them waiting for the signal. Make sure you subscribe to our channel to discover more untold stories from history. At precisely 5:30 a.m., the signal comes. 1,600 German artillery pieces open fire simultaneously. The sound is like the end of the world. Shells scream through the darkness, high explosive, phosphorus. The forest erupts in fire. Trees explode. The ground shakes. American positions are obliterated in the first 60 seconds. Entire companies disappear in walls of flame and shrapnel. For 90 minutes, the barrage continues. 90 minutes of hell. The largest artillery bombardment on the Western Front since the Allied invasion of Normandy. American soldiers who survive huddle at the bottom of their foxholes, hands over their ears, praying that the next shell does not have their name on it. At 7 a.m., the barrage lifts. The sudden silence is almost as terrifying as the noise. American survivors crawl from their holes, ears ringing, eyes adjusting to the pre-dawn darkness. They see shapes moving in the forest, hundreds of shapes, thousands. German infantry emerge from the trees, not scattered skirmish lines, massed formations. Behind them, the ground rumbles, tank engines, the distinctive squeal of Panzer treads on frozen ground, Tiger tanks, Panthers, Mark IVs, the finest armored vehicles in the German arsenal rolling forward through the snow. The Battle of the Bulge has begun. This is Hitler's last great offensive, his final gamble, a desperate attempt to split the Allied armies, capture the vital port of Antwerp, and force the Western Allies to negotiate a separate peace. If it succeeds, Germany gains time to hold off the Russians, maybe to develop new secret weapons, maybe to survive long enough for the alliance between capitalist America and communist Russia to fracture and collapse. If it fails, the war is over. Germany is finished. Hitler knows this. His generals know this. But they have no choice except to attack, to roll the dice one final time and pray for a miracle. Over the next 41 days, American and German forces will fight the largest land battle on the Western Front in World War II. 19,000 Americans will die. 47,000 will be wounded. 23,000 will be missing or captured. Over 1 million soldiers, American, British, and German, will participate in the fighting. The casualties will exceed any American battle in the European theater. The stakes could not be higher. And it all begins here, in the frozen hell of the Ardennes Forest, as dawn breaks on December the 16th, 1944. To understand how this catastrophe happened, we need to go back 3 months, to September 1944. After the liberation of Paris in August, Allied armies race across France. The Germans are in full retreat. British Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery captures Antwerp, Belgium's major port, on September 4th. American forces under Lieutenant General Omar Bradley reach the German border and cross into the fatherland itself. The Siegfried Line, Germany's western fortifications, are breached in multiple places. Victory seems inevitable, imminent. But then the advance stalls. The Allies have outrun their supply lines. Every gallon of gasoline, every artillery shell, every K-ration has to be trucked hundreds of miles from the Normandy beaches. The frontline divisions are exhausted. They need rest, replacements, equipment. The rapid advance has been glorious but costly. General Dwight Eisenhower, Supreme Commander of Allied forces in Europe, faces a strategic decision: where to concentrate his forces for the final push into Germany. Montgomery advocates a narrow thrust in the north, a single powerful spearhead, driving through the Netherlands into the Ruhr industrial region, Germany's industrial heart. "Give me all the supplies," Montgomery argues, "and I will end this war by Christmas." But Bradley and his subordinate, Lieutenant General George Patton, want to attack in the south through the Saar region. Patton, never one for modesty, promises to reach Berlin before the British if given priority. Eisenhower refuses to choose. He orders a broad front strategy. Everyone advances together, no single thrust. Share the supplies. Keep pressure on the Germans everywhere. This decision is controversial. Montgomery is furious. Patton is livid. But Eisenhower is adamant. Broad front it is. The consequences of this decision are immediate. No one has enough supplies for a major offensive. Everyone is stuck in place, conducting limited operations, waiting for logistics to catch up. The war that seemed about to end drags on through October, November, December. Meanwhile, Adolf Hitler is planning. Since the July 20th assassination attempt that nearly killed him, Hitler has grown increasingly paranoid and detached from reality. He spends his days in his command bunker, poring over maps, issuing orders that have no relationship to the situation on the ground. His generals lie to him about German strength, about losses, about what is realistically possible. They tell him what he wants to hear because telling him the truth results in screaming tirades, accusations of defeatism, and sometimes execution for treason. But Hitler still has moments of lucidity. And in September, during one such moment, he has an idea. The Ardennes, the same forest where Germany achieved its greatest victory in 1940. The place where panzer divisions broke through weak French defenses and raced to the English Channel, splitting the Allied armies and forcing France to surrender. Why not do it again? The Americans have thinned their lines in the Ardennes. They think the forest is impassable. They think Germany is beaten. Hit them there, drive to the Meuse River, capture Antwerp, split the British and Americans, force them to negotiate. His generals are horrified. It is impossible, they say. Germany does not have the resources, the fuel, the trained troops, the time. The Luftwaffe, once the terror of Europe, is a hollow shell. Allied air superiority is absolute. Any German offensive will be destroyed from the air before it advances 10 miles. Hitler dismisses their concerns. He orders the attack. Operation Wacht am Rhein. Watch on the Rhine. The name is deliberate deception, suggesting a defensive operation when in fact it is the largest offensive Germany has mounted since the invasion of Russia in 1941. 3 armies are assembled in secret. The 6th Panzer Army under SS General Sepp Dietrich will strike in the north, driving through the Losheim Gap toward Liège and Antwerp. The 5th Panzer Army under General Hasse von Manteuffel will attack in the center, heading for the Meuse River crossings near Dinant. The 7th Army under General Erich Brandenberger will advance on the southern flank, protecting the offensive from American counterattacks. In total, 29 divisions, 250,000 men, 1,300 tanks and assault guns, 1,600 artillery pieces. It is an enormous force, but it is also Germany's last mobile reserve. Everything that can be scraped together. If this fails, there is nothing left. The preparations are meticulous. Troop movements occur only at night. Radio silence is absolute. Dummy radio traffic suggests the new units are being held in reserve near the Rhine. Allied aerial reconnaissance, hampered by terrible weather, sees nothing. Allied intelligence intercepts no unusual German communications. Every indication suggests the Germans are beaten, waiting for the inevitable end. But there are clues, small signs that something is happening. German civilians in border areas are being evacuated. Rail traffic behind the lines has increased. Prisoners captured in minor skirmishes mention seeing new units moving west. One German officer, captured in early December, talks about a major offensive being prepared. These reports reach Allied intelligence. They are filed, noted, and dismissed. The consensus is clear. Germany is finished. They lack the fuel, the men, the equipment for a major offensive. These are just rumors, wishful thinking by soldiers who cannot accept defeat. On December 15th, the day before the offensive, an American intelligence summary states with confidence that the Germans are not capable of mounting a major attack. They are conserving forces for defense. Any offensive action will be limited and local. 24 hours later, this assessment will prove catastrophically wrong. December 16th, 5:30 a.m. The artillery barrage begins. For the American troops in the Ardennes, the bombardment is apocalyptic. Most have never experienced German artillery before. They are green divisions, newly arrived from the States, or exhausted divisions pulled from the line for rest. The 106th Infantry Division, for example, arrived in the sector just 5 days earlier. The men barely know where their positions are. They certainly are not prepared for this. The shells fall like rain. High explosive tears through bunkers and foxholes. White phosphorus sets the forest ablaze. The Americans cannot fight back. Their own artillery is positioned too far to the rear. Their forward observers are killed in the first minutes. Communications are cut. Entire battalions are isolated, cut off, unable to receive orders or call for help. When the barrage lifts at 7 a.m., German infantry surge forward. Volksgrenadier divisions, German infantry units rebuilt after the summer's losses. They are not elite troops. Many are teenagers or more middle-aged men, hastily trained and thrown into battle. But they are fresh, motivated, and they vastly outnumber the Americans in their path. Behind the infantry come the tanks. This is where German strength is concentrated. The Panzer divisions are the real striking force. Tiger II tanks, 70 tons of armor and firepower. Panthers, arguably the finest medium tank in the world. Even the older Mark IV Panzers, obsolete by German standards but still deadly. These tanks roll forward in columns, grinding through American defensive positions, shooting anything that moves. The American response is chaos. Company commanders call their battalion headquarters requesting orders. Battalion calls regiment. Regiment calls division. But the phone lines are cut. Radio nets are jammed or silent. No one knows what is happening. Reports are fragmentary and contradictory. Some positions report being under heavy attack. Others report nothing. Is this a major offensive or just a local counterattack? At his 8th Corps headquarters, Major General Troy Middleton tries to make sense of the situation. Fate Corps holds the Ardennes sector, stretched impossibly thin across 85 miles of front. 4 divisions covering terrain that should require 10. Middleton has been warning for weeks that his line is too weak, but no one listened. The Ardennes is quiet, they said. Safe. Nothing will happen there. Now, something is happening, and it is bad. Reports flood in throughout the morning. The 106th Division is being overrun. The 28th Division is under heavy attack. The 99th Division is holding, but barely. German tanks are reported deep behind American lines. Paratroopers are dropping from the sky, or maybe they are not. Reports are unclear. Middleton makes the critical decision. Hold the road junctions. In the Ardennes, the roads are everything. The forest is too thick, the terrain too broken for cross-country movement. Whoever controls the roads controls the battle. 2 junctions are vital, St. Vith and Bastogne. If the Germans take these towns, their panzers have clear paths to the Meuse River. If the Americans hold them, the German advance bogs down. Middleton orders the 7th Armored Division to move to St. Vith immediately. He orders the 101st Airborne Division, currently in reserve near Reims, France, to move to Bastogne as fast as possible. These are gambles. Moving divisions into battle without knowing the full situation is risky, but doing nothing is worse. Meanwhile, in the north, the 6th Panzer Army's offensive is already running into trouble. The Americans defending the Elsenborn Ridge, a piece of high ground overlooking the German approach routes, refuse to break. The 2nd Infantry Division and the 99th Infantry Division dig in and fight with desperate courage. German infantry waves crash against American positions and are mowed down by machine gun fire. The panzers cannot advance until the infantry clears the Americans from the ridge, but the Americans will not be cleared. For 3 days, the Germans hurl themselves at Elsenborn Ridge. For 3 days, the Americans hold. By December 19th, the 6th Panzer Army has made virtually no progress in its sector. The entire northern shoulder of the offensive has stalled. This is the first critical failure of the German plan. But in the center, the 5th Panzer Army is having better luck. General von Manteuffel's forces punch through American lines and race west. The 116th Panzer Division captures the town of Houffalize. The 2nd Panzer Division reaches Noville, just north of Bastogne. The Panzer Lehr Division advances toward the Meuse. And in the midst of this advancing tide is Kampfgruppe Peiper. Lieutenant Colonel Joachim Peiper is 29 years old, an SS officer, a veteran of the Eastern Front, a man with a reputation for ruthlessness and tactical brilliance. He commands Kampfgruppe Peiper, a reinforced SS Panzer regiment, over 5,000 men and nearly 200 armored vehicles. His mission is simple. Drive to the Meuse River crossings as fast as possible. Do not stop for anything. Do not take prisoners. Speed is everything. Peiper's route takes him through the Losheim Gap, a natural corridor through the Ardennes. From there, west through the Belgian villages of Lanzerath, Honsfeld, Büllingen, Ligneville, and onward to the Meuse. It should be a straight dash, but nothing goes according to plan. First, the roads are terrible, narrow, winding, unpaved in places. The tanks churn the ground to mud even in freezing weather. Vehicles bog down, columns stack up. The advance that should take hours takes days. Second, American resistance is tougher than expected. Small units, cut off and surrounded, fight to the death. A reconnaissance platoon at Lanzerath holds up Peiper's entire Kampfgruppe for hours. 18 men against 5,000. When they finally run out of ammunition and surrender, they have delayed the German advance by over 12 hours. 12 critical hours. Peiper is furious. He screams at his officers. He screams at his men. He forces the column forward, pushing them beyond exhaustion. They advance through the night, tanks grinding through the darkness, following roads that may or may not lead west. No one sleeps, no one rests. On the morning of December 17th, Peiper's spearhead reaches Honsfeld, an American rear area town, supply depots, artillery positions, soldiers who do not expect German tanks to appear out of the morning fog. The massacre is swift. German tanks roll through the town, shooting everything that moves. Dozens of American soldiers are captured. Peiper's men execute many of them on the spot. This is war as it was fought in Russia. No mercy, no prisoners, just kill and advance. From Honsfeld, Peiper moves to Büllingen, where he captures a desperately needed American fuel depot. His tanks gulp down American gasoline, refuel, and push on. By midday, the Kampfgruppe is approaching the crossroads at Baugny, 2 miles southeast of the town of Malmedy. At Baugny, they encounter an American convoy, Battery B of the 285th Field Artillery Observation Battalion, a non-combat unit. Lightly armed jeeps and trucks carrying men whose job is to spot enemy artillery, not fight tanks. They do not stand a chance. The German tanks open fire. The convoy scatters. Some vehicles escape, most do not. Within minutes, over 100 American soldiers are standing in a snow-covered field, hands on their helmets, surrendering to German SS troops. What happens next will haunt both armies for the rest of the war. The prisoners stand in the field. They are cold, scared, but also somewhat relieved. They are out of the war. They will be marched to a prison camp. They will spend the rest of the war behind barbed wire. Not pleasant, but they will survive. Belgian farmer Henri Lejolie watches from his nearby farmhouse. He is surprised by how casual the Americans seem. Some are smoking cigarettes, others are talking quietly. They do not seem overly concerned. After all, this is the Western Front, not the Pacific. The Germans will treat them all according to the Geneva Convention. They are prisoners of war now. They are safe. Kampfgruppe Piper does not stop. Piper himself has already moved ahead, racing toward his next objective. He leaves the prisoners under guard with a small detachment of SS troops. The main column continues west. The tanks disappear over the hill. At approximately 1:15 p.m., German machine guns open fire on the prisoners in the field. There is no warning, no order to run, no attempted escape that provokes the shooting. The machine guns simply open fire. The Americans, packed together in the field, have nowhere to run. They fall in waves. Some drop to the ground, pretending to be dead. Others try to flee into the forest. The German soldiers pursue them, shooting the runners, walking among the bodies in the field, shooting anyone who shows signs of life. Headshots, execution style, to finish off the wounded. 84 Americans die in the field at Bastogne. 43 escape by playing dead or fleeing into the forest. When these survivors reach American lines and report what happened, the news spreads like wildfire through the army. Malmedy, the name sticks, though the massacre actually occurred at Bastogne Crossroads. The Malmedy massacre, the worst atrocity committed against American troops in the European theater. Word passes down through every unit. The SS is executing prisoners. Do not surrender. Fight to the death. And take no prisoners yourself. The effect on American morale is electric. Men who might have retreated now stand and fight. Green troops who have never seen combat suddenly find reserves of courage. The massacre stiffens American resistance across the entire front. It transforms a military battle into something personal, something about survival and revenge. Piper's Kampfgruppe continues its advance, unaware that the massacre has made them the most hated unit in the American army. They reach Stavelot. They reach La Glaise. They get to within 4 miles of the Meuse River, so close. But they run out of fuel. American resistance stiffens. Fighter bombers, finally flying in improved weather, blast the German columns. By December 22nd, Piper's advance is stopped cold. His Kampfgruppe is surrounded, cut off, running out of ammunition and food. On Christmas Day, Piper abandons his tanks and leads his men on foot back to German lines. Of the 5,000 men who started the offensive, 800 return. The spearhead of the German offensive has been blunted, but the battle is far from over. Let me tell you about the men who took the first blow. The 106th Infantry Division, the Golden Lions, a new division, fresh from training in the United States. They arrived in Europe in early December 1944. On December 10th, they moved into the line in the Ardennes, relieving the battle-hardened 2nd Infantry Division. The veterans told them this sector was quiet, easy, a good place to learn the ropes before facing serious combat. 5 days later, the German offensive slams into the 106th Division with the force of an avalanche. 2 of the division's 3 regiments, the 462nd and 423rd, are positioned on the Schnee Eifel, a forested ridge east of St. Vith. It is terrible ground. A salient, protruding into German lines, vulnerable to attack from 3 sides. The division's 3rd Regiment, the 464th, is positioned further south. When the German attack begins, the 422nd and 423rd are immediately cut off, surrounded by advancing German armor. For 3 days, these 2 regiments fight in isolation. They receive orders to hold, to attack, to withdraw, to hold again. The orders are contradictory and impossible. They have no food, little ammunition, no communication with higher headquarters. They can hear German tanks grinding past them in the forest, cutting them off from friendly lines. They know they are surrounded. They know no help is coming. On December 19th, after 3 days without resupply, after repelling multiple German attacks, after watching their positions get overrun piece by piece, the commanders of the 422nd and 423rd Regiments make the most painful decision of their lives. They surrender. Over 7,000 American soldiers walk into German captivity. It is the largest mass surrender of American troops in the European theater. The men of the 106th are devastated. They feel they have failed. that they did not fight hard enough. The shame will haunt many of them for the rest of their lives. But the truth is different. These green troops, thrown into battle against overwhelming odds, held out far longer than anyone had a right to expect. They tied down German divisions that should have been racing to the Meuse. They bought time. Time for reinforcements to reach St. Vith. Time for defenses to be organized around Bastogne. Time that would prove decisive. But the cost was terrible. The 106th Infantry Division effectively ceased to exist. Of the 14,000 men who went into battle on December 16th, fewer than 3,000 remained in the line by December 19th. The rest were dead, wounded, captured, or scattered. The division would be rebuilt, but it would never be the same. While the 106th Division is being destroyed, a race is underway. A race between German panzers and American reinforcements. The prize, Bastogne. Bastogne is a small Belgian town in the Ardennes, population 4,000, unremarkable except for one critical feature. It sits at the center of a road network. 7 major roads converge on Bastogne. From there, you can go anywhere in the Ardennes, control Bastogne, and you control movement through the entire region. Lose Bastogne, and your offensive bogs down in the forest. Both sides understand this. The Germans must take Bastogne or their advance stalls. The Americans must hold Bastogne or the German breakthrough reaches the Meuse. On December 17th, General Eisenhower holds an emergency conference at Verdun with his top commanders, Bradley, Patton, and others. The situation is grim. German tanks are advancing on multiple axes. American divisions are in disarray. The front is collapsing. Eisenhower refuses to panic. He recognizes this German offensive for what it is, not a disaster, but an opportunity. The Germans have come out of their fortifications. They are exposed, in the open, vulnerable. The present situation is to be regarded as one of opportunity for us and not disaster. Eisenhower tells his commanders. There will be only cheerful faces at this conference table. Patton, always aggressive, immediately proposes a counterattack. Give him 3 days, he says, and he will have 3 divisions attacking north into the German flank. 3 days. His staff thinks he is insane. It normally takes weeks to shift an entire army from one axis of advance to another. Patton insists he can do it in 3 days. Eisenhower gives him the order. Patton's Third Army will disengage from its current operations in the Saar, wheel 90 degrees north, and attack into the southern shoulder of the German penetration. Meanwhile, British Field Marshal Montgomery will take command of American forces north of the German penetration, organizing a defense to prevent the Germans from crossing the Meuse. But before any of this can happen, Bastogne must be held. Eisenhower orders the 101st Airborne Division and the 10th Armored Division to move to Bastogne immediately. Both divisions are in reserve. Both can move quickly. The question is, can they get there before the Germans? The 101st Airborne, the Screaming Eagles, are at Camp Mourmelon near Reims, France, over 100 miles from Bastogne. They are resting after months of combat in Holland during Operation Market Garden. Many men are on leave in Paris. Equipment is in maintenance. The division is not ready for combat. But orders are orders. Trucks are commandeered. Every available vehicle in the theater. The division loads up in the middle of the night of December 17th, 18th, and begins the long drive north. They travel through the night, through snow and sleet, not knowing what they are driving toward, only that it is urgent. Most of the division does not have proper winter gear. They are still wearing the uniforms they wore in Holland. No heavy coats, no insulated boots. Many do not have enough ammunition. The move is so rushed that supply has not caught up. They will have to make do with what they carry. At 11 p.m. on December 18th, the lead elements of the 101st Airborne reach Bastogne, just barely. German tanks are already on the outskirts of town, but the Americans have won the race, by hours. The acting division commander is Brigadier General Anthony McAuliffe. The actual commanding general, Major General Maxwell Taylor, is in Washington attending meetings. McAuliffe is an artilleryman, not an infantryman, but he is steady, competent, unflappable, exactly the kind of officer you want in a crisis. McAuliffe assesses the situation quickly. Bastogne is nearly surrounded. German forces are closing in from the north, east, and south. American units are streaming through town in retreat. remnants of shattered divisions, leaderless men looking for someone to tell them what to do. McAuliffe stops the retreat. He organizes the stragglers. He positions his own troops in a defensive perimeter around the town, 8 miles in circumference, thin, very thin, but it will have to hold. On December 20th, the Germans complete their encirclement. Bastogne is cut off. No supplies can get in. No reinforcements can arrive. The wounded cannot be evacuated. The 11,000 American troops in Bastogne, paratroopers, tankers, artillery, and the remnants of half a dozen shattered units, are on their own. The siege of Bastogne has begun. One of the most critical factors in the Battle of the Bulge is something neither side can control: the weather. From December 16th through December 22nd, the weather over the Ardennes is apocalyptic. Heavy clouds blanket the region from ground level to over 15,000 feet. Visibility is measured in yards, fog, mist, snow, sleet, rain that turns to ice, temperatures that plunge to well below freezing at night and barely rise above during the day. For the Germans, this weather is a blessing. Allied air superiority is the one thing they fear most. American and British fighter bombers have dominated European skies since D-Day. A single P-47 Thunderbolt or Typhoon can destroy an entire tank column if given the chance. But in this weather, planes cannot fly, pilots cannot see. The massive Allied air armadas that could end the German offensive in hours are grounded, useless, waiting for the weather to clear. German columns advance in daylight, confident they will not be attacked from above. Supply convoys move openly on roads. Artillery positions sit in the open without camouflage. This is a freedom German forces have not enjoyed since 1941, and they exploit it ruthlessly. But the weather is also a curse for the Germans. The roads turn to mud, vehicles bog down, fuel consumption skyrockets as tanks grind through muck and snow. Supply columns that should take hours to reach the front take days. And the cold, the bitter, bone-deep cold, saps the strength of men and machines. Engines seize, weapons malfunction, soldiers get frostbite and trench foot. The wounded, left lying in the snow for hours while medics attend to others, freeze to death before they can be evacuated. For the Americans, the weather is pure hell. Air support, the one thing that could tip the balance, is unavailable. Supplies cannot be flown in to surrounded units like Bastogne. Wounded cannot be evacuated by air. Artillery forward observers cannot see targets through the fog and snow. Everything is harder, slower, more dangerous. And the cold. My God, the cold. American troops are not prepared for winter warfare. Most are wearing field jackets designed for autumn weather, not sub-zero temperatures. Many do not have overshoes or insulated boots. Gloves are in short supply. Men stuff newspapers inside their uniforms for insulation. They sleep to a sleeping bag for warmth. They huddle around fires when they can, knowing the smoke gives away their position, but too cold to care. Trench foot becomes epidemic. Thousands of men are evacuated with frozen feet. Some lose toes. Some lose entire feet to frostbite and gangrene. The medical system, already overwhelmed by battle casualties, cannot cope with the additional burden of cold weather injuries. But the men endure. They have no choice. Hold the line, they are told. Do not retreat. The Germans must be stopped. So they stay in their foxholes, shivering, miserable, wondering when this nightmare will end. Some pray for the weather to clear so air support can save them. Others pray for it to stay bad so they cannot be ordered to attack through it. On December 22nd, something miraculous happens. December 22nd. The weather begins to clear, not completely, not immediately, but patches of blue sky appear through the overcast. Visibility improves. Ceilings lift above 5,000 feet. At air bases across France and England, pilots scramble to their aircraft. For 6 days they have been grounded, listening to radio reports of the German offensive, helpless to intervene. Now, finally they can fly. The response is overwhelming. Thousands of sorties, P-47 Thunderbolts armed with bombs and rockets, P-51 Mustangs strafing German columns, British Typhoons launching devastating attacks with rockets, medium bombers, B-26 Marauders and A-20 Havocs, striking rail yards and supply depots, Heavy bombers, B-17 flying fortresses, and B-24 liberators, carpet bombing German troop concentrations. For the Germans, it is a catastrophe. Columns that have been moving freely in daylight are suddenly exposed. Fighter bombers dive out of the sky, guns blazing, rockets whooshing off wing rails. Tanks explode, trucks burn, men scatter into the forest seeking cover. Supply convoys grind to a halt, afraid to move in. Daylight. The German advance, already slowing, loses momentum completely. The same day, December 22nd, something else happens at Bastogne. 4 German officers approach American lines carrying a white flag. They have a message for the American commander. It is typed on 2 sheets of paper, one in English, one in German. To the USA, commander of the encircled town of Bastogne, the fortune of war is changing. This time, the USA forces in and near Bastogne have been encircled by strong German armored units. There is only one possibility to save the encircled USA troops from total annihilation. That is the honorable surrender of the encircled town. If this proposal should be rejected, 1 German artillery corps and 6 heavy AA battalions are ready to annihilate the USA troops in and near Bastogne. The order for firing will be given immediately after this 2 hours term. All the serious civilian losses caused by this artillery fire would not correspond with the well-known American humanity. The German commander. The message is delivered to General McAuliffe. He reads it, crumples it into a ball, throws it in a wastepaper basket, and says one word: nuts. His staff officers laugh. Someone suggests that McAuliffe's initial reaction is probably the best possible reply. McAuliffe agrees. A typed response is prepared and delivered to the waiting German officers. To the German commander, nuts, the American commander. The Germans are baffled. They do not understand the American slang. Colonel Joseph Harper, delivering the message, has to explain, in plain English, it is the same as go to hell. And I will tell you something else. If you continue to attack, we will kill every goddamn German that tries to break into this city. The German officers return to their lines. The siege continues. Nuts becomes the rallying cry of the defense of Bastogne. Radio broadcasts carry the story across America. Newspapers print it on front pages, a one-word defiance in the face of impossible odds. It is exactly the kind of story Americans need in this dark December. Proof that their soldiers are not beaten, that they will fight, that they will hold. On December 23rd, the weather clears further. The sky over Bastogne opens up. Transport aircraft, C-47 Dakotas, fly in supplies. Flying low over the town, bomb bay doors open, they drop bundles attached to colored parachutes. Ammunition, medical supplies, food, blankets. The drops are not precise. Some bundles land outside the perimeter in German-held territory. But enough land inside. Enough to keep the defenders alive. Enough to keep them fighting. The paratroopers and tankers of Bastogne watch the transport planes circle overhead, see the parachutes blossom in the sky, and they cheer. They know they have not been abandoned. They know help is coming. They just have to hold a little longer. And the fighters come too. P-47s orbiting over Bastogne, ready to dive on any German unit that attacks. When German artillery opens fire, the P-47s swoop down and silence the guns. When German tanks mass for an assault, the P-47s blast them with rockets before they can reach American lines. Air power, absent for the first crucial week, is now decisive. The Germans cannot move, cannot attack effectively, can only watch as their offensive bleeds away into the frozen ground. On December 24th, Christmas Eve, the men of Bastogne receive a message from General McAuliffe. It is read aloud to every unit. Merry Christmas. What is merry about all this? We are fighting. It is cold. We aren't home. All true. But what has the proud Eagle Division accomplished with its worthy comrades of the 10th Armored Division, the 705th Tank Destroyer Battalion, and all the rest? Just this. We have stopped cold everything that has been thrown at us. We have identifications from 4 German Panzer divisions, 2 German infantry divisions, and 1 German parachute division. These units, spearheading the last desperate German lunge, were headed straight west for key points when the Eagle Division was hurriedly ordered to stem the advance. How effectively this was done will be written in history. Not alone in our division's glorious history, but in world history. The Germans actually did surround us. So what? They have been beaten back. Soon the marching feet of our relief will be heard. Christmas Day, 1944. The weather is clear, cold, bright sunshine glinting off snow. In the foxholes around Bastogne, American soldiers heat K-rations over small fires. Some sing Christmas carols quietly. Others think about home, about families gathered around Christmas trees, about children opening presents, about everything they are missing, but they also know they are holding, that they are winning, that relief is coming. Patton's Third Army is fighting its way north. The sound of artillery to the south grows louder each day. It is only a matter of time. That afternoon, German bombers appear over Bastogne, the Luftwaffe, making one of its rare appearances of the battle. They drop bombs on the town. Buildings collapse. Civilians die in the rubble. A makeshift aid station takes a direct hit, killing wounded soldiers and medics. But the bombardment changes nothing. The defenders do not break. They endure. They hold. On December 26th, the day after Christmas, tanks appear on the southern horizon. American tanks. Sherman tanks of the 4th Armored Division, spearhead of Patton's Third Army. They have fought through 40 miles of German-held territory in 3 days. They have suffered heavy casualties, but they have reached Bastogne. The siege is broken. Bastogne is relieved, but the battle is not over. Not even close. Let me tell you about the men who fought this battle. Not generals, not strategies, just soldiers. Young men, most in their late teens and early 20s, freezing in foxholes, wondering if they would live to see another sunrise. Private First Class Richard Brookins, 99th Infantry Division, 20 years old, from a small town in Indiana. He has been in Europe for 3 months. On December 16th, he is manning a forward observation post when the German barrage begins. His foxhole takes a direct hit. When he regains consciousness, his left arm is shattered. His best friend, lying next to him, is dead. Brookins crawls 3 miles through German-occupied territory to reach American lines. He survives. His friend does not. 50 years later, Brookins still wakes up sometimes hearing the whistle of incoming artillery. Staff Sergeant Vernon McGarity, 401st Bombardment Group. He is not supposed to be in ground combat. He is a B-17 crew chief. But when the German breakthrough threatens his airbase, everyone who can hold a rifle is pressed into service. McGarity finds himself in a foxhole on the perimeter, armed with an M1 Garand and a pocket full of ammunition. When German infantry attack, he shoots until his rifle barrel is too hot to touch. He is awarded the Silver Star for holding his position. He never wanted to be a hero. He just wanted to go home. Corporal Edward Peniche, 101st Airborne, a Mexican-American from Texas. He has already jumped into Normandy and Holland. Bastogne is supposed to be his 3rd major battle, but nothing could have prepared him for the cold, the miserable, soul-crushing cold that makes everything harder. Loading a weapon with frozen fingers, eating frozen rations, sleeping, if you can call it sleeping, in a frozen foxhole. Peniche survives Bastogne, but loses 3 toes to frostbite. He considers himself lucky. These are the real stories of the Battle of the Bulge. Not grand strategy, not sweeping tank movements on maps, but individual men, scared and cold and far from home, doing their duty because there is nothing else to do. They hold because retreat means abandoning their buddies. They fight because surrender means prison camp or death. They endure because giving up is not an option. And they die, 19,000 of them, in foxholes, in burning tanks, in collapsed bunkers, on frozen roads. Their bodies left in the snow for days, sometimes weeks, before graves registration teams can retrieve them. Young men who will never go home, never see their families again, never grow old, frozen forever at 19, 20, 22 years old. While Bastogne gets the headlines, another battle is raging 30 miles to the east. St. Vith, a town that becomes nearly as important as Bastogne, but receives far less attention. St. Vith sits at another critical road junction. Control it, and the Germans have a direct route west through the center of their offensive. Lose it, and their entire center bogs down in the Ardennes Forest, unable to advance on narrow forest trails. The town is defended by elements of the shattered 106th Division, reinforced by the 7th Armored Division, which arrives on December 17th. The commander is Brigadier General Robert Hasbrouck, a competent, aggressive officer who recognizes immediately how critical this position is. The Germans want St. Vith badly. They throw multiple divisions at it: infantry, tanks, artillery. The attacks begin on December the 17th and continue for 6 days. 6 days of brutal fighting, house to house, street to street. American tank destroyers ambush German panzers from concealed positions. Bazooka's teams stalk Tiger tanks through rubble-strewn streets. Infantry fight desperate actions in cellars and attics. The Americans cannot hold St. Vith forever. Everyone knows this. They are outnumbered, outgunned, surrounded on 3 sides. But they can delay. They can make the Germans pay for every yard, and delay is exactly what the Allied High Command needs. On December 21st, after holding St. Vith for 6 days against overwhelming odds, Hasbrouck is ordered to withdraw. His forces conduct a fighting retreat west, abandoning the town but keeping their units intact. The Germans finally take St. Vith on December 21st, but the prize is hollow. They are 6 days behind schedule. Their offensive has lost momentum, and by the time they clear St. Vith, American forces have established new defensive lines further west. The defense of St. Vith is one of the unsung victories of the Battle of the Bulge. It bought time, precious time, time that allowed reserves to arrive, time that allowed defensive positions to be prepared, time that helped save Bastogne and stop the German advance short of the Meuse. The men who fought at St. Vith, tankers and infantrymen from half a dozen shattered units, received little recognition. No one writes songs about them. No one gives speeches about their defiance. But they did their job. They held as long as possible. They withdrew when ordered. They saved the line. This is a battle of tanks. American Shermans against German Panthers and Tigers. It is a mismatch on paper, and the reality is even worse. The American M4 Sherman tank is reliable, easy to maintain, easy to produce. America has built tens of thousands of them, but it is outgunned and out-armored by German heavy tanks. A Sherman 75mm gun can barely penetrate a Tiger's frontal armor. Meanwhile, a Tiger's 88mm gun can punch through a Sherman's armor at over a mile. In a straight-up fight, a Tiger kills a Sherman every time. But tank warfare is not just about gun-to-gun duels. It is about tactics, terrain, numbers, and luck. American tank commanders learn quickly. Do not fight Tigers frontally. Flank them, ambush them. Use terrain to close the range. Get behind them where their armor is thinner. Use tank destroyers with more powerful guns to engage from long range while Shermans maneuver. The M36 Jackson tank destroyer mounts a 90mm gun that can kill a Tiger. The M10 Wolverine has a 76mm that can penetrate Panther armor from the side. These vehicles, lightly armored but mobile, become critical. They set up ambushes along narrow roads. They wait for German columns to pass. They fire from concealment and then retreat before the Germans can return fire. One American tank destroyer crew, commanded by Sergeant Henry Warner, knocks out 4 German tanks in a single engagement near St. Vith. They position their M10 behind a stone wall at a crossroads. German tanks approach in column, unaware of the ambush. Warner waits until the lead tank is 50 yards away. Fires. Hit. The German tank brews up, blocking the road. The second tank tries to reverse. Warner fires again. Hit. The third and fourth tanks attempt to maneuver around the burning wrecks. Warner's loader slams shells into the breach as fast as he can. 2 more hits, 4 kills. Then Warner orders his crew to pull back before German infantry can flank them. This is how American tank crews survive, not by fighting fair, by fighting smart, using every advantage, exploiting German mistakes, and accepting that sometimes you lose. Sometimes the German tank sees you first. Sometimes you fire and miss. Sometimes your shell bounces off their armor, and their shell does not bounce off yours. Sometimes you die. The tank battles in the Ardennes are savage. Dozens of tanks burning on both sides. Crews bailing out of crippled vehicles, running through snow while machine guns chatter. Wounded tankers trapped inside burning holes, screaming for help that cannot reach them. the smell of burning flesh and cordite and diesel fuel. The sound of ammunition cooking off inside destroyed tanks, explosions that continue for hours after the tank is hit. By the end of the battle, American forces will have lost over 700 tanks. The Germans will have lost over 600. These numbers do not capture the human cost. Each destroyed tank means 4 or 5 dead or wounded men, thousands of tankers killed, thousands more wounded, burns, amputations, trauma that will haunt them for decades. But the American advantage is numbers. Germany cannot replace its losses. Every Tiger destroyed is irreplaceable. Every experienced crew killed cannot be replaced with green recruits. America can replace losses. For every Sherman destroyed, 3 more are built. For every crew killed, replacements arrive from training camps. It is brutal arithmetic, but it is decisive. By late December, German armored strength is evaporating, while American tank forces grow stronger. George S. Patton is many things: brilliant, profane, egotistical, ruthless, controversial. But he is also one of the finest tactical commanders in the American Army. And when the moment demands it, he performs miracles. On December 19th, Patton attends Eisenhower's conference at Verdun. When Eisenhower asks how quickly Patton can disengage from his current operations and attack north into the German flank, Patton replies immediately, 3 days. The room falls silent. Everyone thinks he is joking or grandstanding. Patton's Third Army is currently attacking east into the Saar. To shift 90 degrees and attack north requires disengaging 3 divisions, turning them around, moving them over 100 miles on icy roads, and launching a coordinated offensive in winter against prepared German positions. Military doctrine says this should take 2 weeks minimum. Patton says 3 days. He is not joking. Before attending the conference, Patton had his staff prepare contingency plans for exactly this scenario, multiple versions depending on how many divisions Eisenhower would give him. Patton, for all his flamboyance, is a meticulous planner. He knows exactly what he needs to do. His staff has already issued preliminary orders. Convoys are already moving. By the time Patton leaves Verdun, the first elements of Third Army are en route to their jumping-off positions. On December 22nd, exactly 3 days after the Verdun conference, Patton launches his counterattack. The 4th Armored Division, the 26th Infantry Division, and the 80th Infantry Division attack north into the southern shoulder of the German Bulge. They hit the German 7th Army, the weakest of the 3 German armies in the offensive, and they hit it hard. The advance is brutal, narrow roads, heavy snow, German resistance. The 4th Armored Division, leading the attack, suffers heavy casualties, but they keep moving. Grinding forward, 50 miles in 5 days. It seems slow, but it is remarkably fast for winter warfare in that terrain. On December 26th, as we have seen, the 4th Armored reaches Bastogne, but Patton does not stop there. He pushes his other divisions forward. The 26th Infantry fights through the towns of Rambrusch and Wiltz. The 80th Infantry clears Edelbruck and heads north toward Diekirch. More divisions arrive and join the offensive. By early January, Patton has 8 divisions attacking north, grinding away at the southern face of the German salient. Patton drives his men mercilessly. He visits forward units constantly, chewing out officers whose units are not advancing fast enough, awarding medals to those who distinguish themselves, threatening to relieve commanders who show any hesitation. He is not beloved, but he is respected. His troops know that when Patton says attack, there is usually a good reason, and they know he will support them with everything he has. By mid-January, Patton's offensive has pushed the Germans back 20 miles. The southern face of the Bulge is collapsing. German units are retreating in disorder. American forces are capturing or killing thousands of Germans. The tide has turned. By December 26th, the German offensive has reached its high water mark. The 2nd Panzer Division gets to within 4 miles of the Meuse River before being stopped by American and British forces. This is as far as they go. From here, it is all retreat. Why did the German offensive fail? Multiple reasons, cascading failures that doom the operation. First, logistics. The Germans planned the offensive on the assumption they would capture American fuel depots and use captured supplies. This is insane. Basing an entire strategic offensive on capturing enemy supplies is desperate gambling, not military planning. But Germany has so little fuel that they have no choice. When they fail to capture the major fuel depots, Piper grabs one small depot at Büllingen but misses the massive depot at Spa. Their tanks run dry. Panzers are abandoned for lack of fuel. Entire divisions grind to a halt. You cannot fight a mobile war without fuel. Second, American resistance. The Germans expected American forces to collapse, to retreat in panic, to abandon equipment and run. Instead, American units fight. They hold road junctions. They conduct delaying actions. They slow the German advance to a crawl, the defense of Elsenborn Ridge, the stand at St. Vith, the siege of Bastogne. These actions buy time. Time for reserves to arrive. Time for defensive lines to form. Time for the weather to clear. Third, the weather. The Germans needed bad weather for their offensive to succeed, and they got it, for 6 days. But on December 22nd, the weather cleared. Allied air power, grounded for the first crucial days, returned with a vengeance. German columns were destroyed from the air. Supply convoys were obliterated. Troop concentrations were carpet-bombed. The Germans could not move in daylight, could not resupply their forward units, could not concentrate for attacks without being spotted and attacked from the air. Fourth, German casualties. The offensive was supposed to be a quick breakthrough, followed by a race to the Meuse. Instead, it became a grinding battle of attrition. German infantry divisions, attacking fortified American positions, suffered terrible losses. Panzer divisions, engaging in tank duels and urban fighting, lost irreplaceable vehicles and crews. By late December, German units were at half strength or less. Exhausted, out of ammunition, out of fuel, out of hope. Fifth, Allied reinforcements. The Germans assumed the Allies would need weeks to respond. Instead, within days, American and British divisions were moving toward the Ardennes from all directions. Patton's Third Army from the south, the 82nd Airborne and 30th Infantry from the north, British armored divisions from the west. By Christmas, the Allies had more troops in the Ardennes than the Germans. The offensive that was supposed to overwhelm the Americans instead became a battle the Germans could not win. By late December, German commanders are requesting permission to withdraw. They have failed. The offensive has achieved nothing except heavy losses. Every day they stay in the salient, they lose more men and equipment. Hitler refuses. He demands they continue attacking. Take Bastogne. Cross the Meuse. Victory is within reach if they just push harder. But victory is not within reach. It was never within reach. The entire offensive was. Doomed from the start. A desperate throw of the dice by a regime that refused to accept reality. Now the dice have come up snake eyes, and Germany must pay the price. On January 3, 1945, Hitler finally authorizes a withdrawal. The order is not to retreat completely, but to pull back to more defensible positions and prepare for future operations. But there will be no future operations. The German army in the West is broken. The offensive has consumed Germany's last mobile reserves. From here, there is only retreat, only defeat, only the inevitable end. Even as the Germans begin to withdraw, the fighting continues. This is not an orderly retreat. This is chaos. German units trapped in pockets fighting to break out. American forces pursuing retreating columns. British and American units squeezing the bulge from north and south. Artillery fire from both sides turning the Ardennes into a moonscape of shell craters and burning vehicles. The fighting in early January 1945 is some of the most savage of the entire battle. Both sides are exhausted. Both sides have suffered terrible losses, but neither side will quit. The Americans want to destroy as many German units as possible before they escape. The Germans want to save as many men as possible and inflict maximum casualties on their pursuers. Individual battles rage across the shrinking German salient. Houffalize, St. Hubert, La Roche. Each town becomes a battlefield. Each forest road a killing ground. American infantry advance through snow-covered woods, never knowing when German machine guns will open fire from concealed positions. American tanks push forward on icy roads, vulnerable to German anti-tank guns hidden behind stone walls and in farmhouses. The Germans fight skillful rearguard actions, Small units delay American advances for hours, then withdraw to the next position. Panzers and assault guns engage American armor at long range, knock out a few tanks, then pull back before being flanked. Entire villages are booby-trapped with mines and explosives, turning each building into a death trap for American infantry. But the outcome is inevitable. The Americans and British have more men, more tanks, more artillery, more supplies. And most critically, they have air superiority. Every time the weather clears, Allied fighters and bombers savage German positions. By mid-January, German units are reduced to shadows of their former strength. Divisions that started the offensive with 15,000 men now have 3,000. Tank battalions that began with 40 vehicles now have 6. On January 16, 1945, American forces from north and south meet at Houffalize, effectively cutting the bulge in half. German forces withdraw east, back across the German border, abandoning equipment, abandoning wounded, just trying to escape the trap. By January 25th, the battle is officially over. American and British forces have pushed the Germans back to their starting positions. The front line is restored, the bulge is eliminated, the last major German offensive in the West has failed. But the cost, dear God, the cost. January 1st, 1945, New Year's Day. While Americans at home celebrate with champagne and resolutions, soldiers in the Ardennes mark the new year in frozen foxholes, wondering if they will live to see February. The German withdrawal has begun, but it is not a rout. Not yet. German forces are conducting a fighting retreat, giving ground slowly, making the Americans pay for every mile. And Hitler, in a final act of desperation, orders one more surprise, Operation Bodenplatte, the plate base raid. A massive Luftwaffe strike against Allied airfields in Belgium and Holland. On the morning of January 1st, over 1,000 German aircraft take off from bases across Germany. Their mission? Destroy Allied aircraft on the ground, cripple Allied air power, give German ground forces breathing room to withdraw. The raid achieves complete surprise. German fighters and bombers appear over Allied airfields at dawn, strafing and bombing parked aircraft. At some bases, entire squadrons are destroyed before pilots can scramble. Over 300 Allied aircraft are destroyed or damaged on the ground. It is the Luftwaffe's largest operation in months, a spectacular tactical success. But it is also a strategic disaster. The Germans lose over 300 aircraft and, more critically, over 200 pilots. Experienced aviators who cannot be replaced. The Luftwaffe, already on its last legs, has just committed suicide. The operation destroys Allied aircraft that can be replaced in days. In exchange, it destroys German pilots who cannot be replaced at all. After January 1st, the Luftwaffe effectively ceases to exist as a fighting force. Allied air superiority becomes Allied air dominance, total and absolute. On the ground, American and British forces are tightening the noose. From the north, British XXX Corps and American 7 Corps attack south. From the south, Patton's 3rd Army attacks north. From the west, fresh American divisions push east. The bulge is being squeezed from all sides. The plan is simple. Crush the German salient. Trap as many German divisions as possible. Destroy them before they can escape back across the German border. Eisenhower wants this to be an American Stalingrad, a battle of annihilation that cripples German military power permanently. But Montgomery, commanding the northern forces, has other ideas. Montgomery is cautious, methodical. He insists on proper preparation before attacking, build up supplies, organize logistics, attack only when conditions are perfect. This drives Patton and other American commanders insane. Every day Montgomery delays is a day more Germans escape. Every hour spent preparing is an hour German engineers are blowing bridges and laying minefields. The British and American forces finally launch their coordinated offensive on January 3rd. By then, the Germans have already begun withdrawing. The trap that might have destroyed the German army instead becomes a grinding pursuit. American and British forces push forward through terrible weather and determined resistance. But they are pushing against an enemy that is running away, not standing to fight. Individual battles erupt across the shrinking salient. Towns change hands multiple times. Houffalize, La Roche, St. Hubert. Each becomes a miniature battlefield. German rear guards fight from prepared positions. American infantry attack through snow that is sometimes waist-deep. Tanks maneuver on roads that are sheets of ice. Artillery from both sides turns the forest into a wasteland of splintered trees and smoking craters. One American soldier, Private Kurt Vonnegut, of the 106th Division, is captured during the initial German assault. He survives the massacre of his division and is sent to Dresden, Germany as a prisoner of war. He will survive the war and later write a novel about his experiences called Slaughterhouse 5. But that is a story for later. Right now, he is just another scared kid trying to survive in a world gone mad. The final 2 weeks of January 1945 see the systematic elimination of the Bulge. It is not dramatic. It is not quick. It is methodical, grinding warfare in the worst possible conditions. American forces attacking from the south make steady progress. The 6th Armored Division, the 90th Infantry Division, the 17th Airborne Division, fresh units thrown into the battle to replace exhausted divisions that have been fighting since December 16th. These new divisions are better prepared for winter warfare. They have proper cold weather gear. They have learned from the mistakes of the first weeks. They are effective. But the Germans are also learning. They have fought Americans for 7 months now, since Normandy. They know American tactics. They know American strengths and weaknesses. And they are expert at defensive warfare. Every village becomes a strong point. Every forest trail is covered by machine guns. Every bridge is demolished. Every road is mined. The Americans advance, but slowly, and at terrible cost. The 87th Infantry Division attacks the town of Tillet on January 9th. The town sits on a hill, surrounded by open ground. The only approach is up a slope covered by German machine guns and mortars. 3 times the Americans attack. 3 times they are thrown back with heavy losses. Finally, on the 4th attempt, using smoke screens and concentrated artillery fire, they break through. The cost? 200 casualties to capture a village that held 50 German defenders. This pattern repeats across the front. Small gains bought with blood. Towns captured house by house. Hills taken at the cost of dozens of lives. There is nothing glorious about this fighting. It is brutal, exhausting. The men who fight it are numb with cold, numb with fatigue, numb with horror at what they have seen and done. From the north, American and British forces grind south. The 2nd Armored Division, the 84th Infantry Division, units of British XXX Corps. They face the same problems as forces attacking from the south. Terrible weather, determined resistance, blown bridges, mined roads. Progress is measured in hundreds of yards per day, not miles. But progress is made. Slowly, inexorably, the 2 pincers close. On January 16, 1945, exactly 1 month after the German offensive began, American forces from north and south meet at Houffalize. The Bulge is cut in 2. German forces trapped west of the meeting point surrender or are destroyed. German forces east of Houffalize retreat toward the German border in disorder. By January 25th, the front line is restored to its December 15th positions. The Battle of the Bulge is officially over. 41 days of combat, the longest, bloodiest battle American forces fought in World War II. Now comes the accounting, the adding up of costs, the measuring of what was gained and what was lost. American casualties, 19,000 killed, 47,500 wounded, 23,000 missing or captured. Total, 89,000 casualties, the highest American casualty count of any battle in the European theater, higher than Normandy, higher than the fighting across France, higher than the battles on the German border. But these numbers do not tell the full story. Let me give you the details that the official histories often gloss over. 19,000 dead. That is 19,000 families receiving telegrams beginning with, "The Secretary of War desires me to express his deep regret." 19,000 mothers who will never see their sons again. 19,000 young men who will never marry, never have children, never grow old. They are frozen forever at 20, 22, 25 years old. Their bodies are recovered from foxholes, from burning tanks, from snow-covered fields. Some are identified, some are not. Some are buried in military cemeteries in Belgium. Some are shipped home to small towns across America for burial in family plots. 47,500 wounded. Burns, amputations, shrapnel wounds, bullet wounds, spinal injuries, brain injuries. Frostbite so severe that toes, feet, even legs must be amputated. Some of these men recover, return to duty, fight again. Others are evacuated to hospitals in England, then shipped home to stateside hospitals for months or years of recovery. Some will be disabled for life. Some will carry their wounds, physical and psychological, for the next 70 years. 23,000 missing or captured. Some of the missing are dead, their bodies not yet recovered. Some are captured, marched east to prisoner of war camps in Germany. Prison camps that are overcrowded, undersupplied, brutal. Some prisoners will survive the camps and be liberated in April or May when Allied forces overrun Germany. Some will not survive. They will die of starvation, disease, exposure, or murder at the hands of their captors. And these numbers only count American casualties. They do not count the British casualties. 300 killed, 1,200 wounded. Small numbers compared to the Americans, but each one is a tragedy. Each one is a family destroyed. German casualties are harder to estimate. German record-keeping in the final months of the war was chaotic. But the best estimates are these: 12,000 killed, 38,000 wounded, 30,000 captured. Total, 80,000 casualties. Germany suffered fewer casualties than America, but Germany cannot afford the losses. America can replace its losses. Germany cannot. But the real cost to Germany is in equipment. 600 tanks destroyed or abandoned. Over 1,000 artillery pieces lost. 3,000 vehicles destroyed. This is equipment Germany cannot replace. The factories are being bombed around the clock by Allied air forces. The supply of raw materials has collapsed. The transportation network is shattered. Every tank lost is gone forever. Every gun destroyed cannot be rebuilt. And the offensive consumed Germany's last fuel reserves. The panzers that ran out of gas in Belgium were not refueled. They were abandoned. Germany has no more fuel. The synthetic fuel plants are bombed. The Romanian oil fields are in Soviet hands. There is nothing left. Most critically, Germany has expended its last mobile reserves, the Panzer divisions, the SS divisions, the elite units that might have been used to defend the Rhine, to delay the Allied advance into Germany, to hold off the Russians for a few more months. They are gone, used up in a failed offensive that achieved nothing except to hasten Germany's collapse. Civilian casualties are also horrific. Belgian civilians caught in the crossfire, American bombs and German bombs falling on villages, artillery fire that does not distinguish between soldiers and civilians, houses destroyed, families killed. Over 3,000 Belgian and Luxembourgish civilians die in the battle. Thousands more are left homeless in the middle of winter. In the German town of Clairvaux, every building is damaged or destroyed. The medieval castle is a gutted ruin. The churches are rubble. The population, those who survive, are refugees with nothing but the clothes on their backs. This is the price of the Battle of the Bulge. Over 170,000 military casualties, thousands of civilian deaths, entire towns destroyed, families shattered, lives ruined. And for what? What did Hitler's last offensive achieve? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Amidst the horror and the waste, there are stories of courage, of men who went beyond the call of duty, who risked everything to save their comrades, who held impossible positions against overwhelming odds, who earned the highest honors their country could bestow. 21 medals of honor are awarded for actions during the Battle of the Bulge. 21 men who displayed valor so extraordinary, so selfless, that their actions are deemed worthy of the nation's highest military decoration. 17 of these awards are posthumous. The recipients did not survive their acts of heroism. Let me tell you about some of them. First Lieutenant Eric G. Fisher, Jr., 157th Infantry Regiment. On January 27, near Grammont, Belgium, Fisher's company is pinned down by German machine gun fire. They cannot advance. They cannot retreat. Men are dying in the open. Fisher, wounded twice already, stands up and charges the German position alone. He throws grenades. He fires his rifle. He draws German fire away from his men. He is hit multiple times, but keeps fighting until he reaches the German position and silences it. He dies from his wounds. But his company escapes. 30 men survive because one man was willing to die for them. Staff Sergeant Paul J. Wiedorfer, 318th Infantry Regiment. On Christmas Day near Bastogne, Wiedorfer's platoon is attacked by German tanks and infantry. The platoon breaks and runs. Everyone except Wiedorfer. He stays in his foxhole with a bazooka, alone. He destroys 2 German tanks at point-blank range. He holds off German infantry with his rifle. He calls artillery fire on his own position when Germans overrun him. When the artillery lifts and his platoon counterattacks, they find Wiedorfer alive, wounded, surrounded by dead Germans. He receives the Medal of Honor. He survives the war. He dies in Pennsylvania in 2014, age 91. Private First Class Melvin E. Biddle, 517th Parachute Infantry Regiment. December 23 through 24, near Soy, Belgium. Biddle, a scout, voluntarily stays forward of his unit's lines for 2 nights, providing warning of German movements. When German tanks attack, Biddle engages them with a bazooka, destroying 1 tank. When German infantry approach, he holds them off with rifle fire. For 48 hours, he refuses to withdraw, refuses medical treatment for his wounds, refuses to abandon his position. When he finally rejoins his unit, he has saved dozens of lives by his early warnings. He survives. He receives the Medal of Honor from President Truman in August 1945. These are just 3 of 21. Each story is different. Each story is the same. Young men, far from home, facing impossible situations, doing the impossible. Not because they want to be heroes, not because they are seeking glory, but because their buddies need them, because someone has to do it, because there is no one else. Beyond the Medal of Honor recipients, there are thousands of acts of courage that go unrecorded. The medic who runs into machine gun fire to drag a wounded soldier to safety. The tank crew that stays with their burning vehicle long enough for infantry to escape. The company commander who leads from the front when every instinct screams to hide. The rifleman who holds his position when everyone else has run. These men do not become famous. Their names do not appear in history books. But they are the reason America won the Battle of the Bulge. Not grand strategy, not superior equipment, not overwhelming numbers, but individual courage, individual sacrifice. Men doing their duty when it would have been so much easier to quit. Let me tell you about the people who do not fight but who save the lives of those who do. The doctors and nurses of the medical corps. The men and women who work in field hospitals under canvas and sub-zero temperatures, performing surgery by lantern light, trying to save soldiers who should already be dead. During the Battle of the Bulge, the medical system is overwhelmed. Thousands of casualties pour into aid stations faster than they can be treated. The wounded lie on stretchers in the snow, waiting for their turn. Some wait hours. Some die waiting. Captain Renée Lemaire is a Belgian nurse working with American medical units. On Christmas Eve, 1944, she is working at an aid station in Bastogne when German bombers attack. The building takes a direct hit. Lemaire is in the basement, tending to wounded soldiers, when the building collapses. She and dozens of wounded men are buried in the rubble. Rescuers dig for hours. They recover bodies. Lemaire's body is found days later, still holding the hand of a wounded soldier she was trying to comfort. She is 30 years old. Lieutenant Colonel Paul R. Hawley, chief surgeon of the European Theater, later writes, "In the Bulge, we performed miracles. We saved men who should have died. We treated frostbite and trench foot on a scale we never imagined. We performed surgery in conditions that would shock any civilian doctor. And we did it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for 6 weeks. Our people were exhausted, but they never quit." The numbers are staggering. During the battle, field hospitals treat over 60,000 patients, 60,000 wounded, frostbitten, sick soldiers. Each one needs attention, each one needs treatment. Many need surgery, blood transfusions, plasma, antibiotics, care that must be provided under combat conditions, with shells falling, with supplies running low, with electricity coming from generators that break down constantly. Nurses work 12, 16, 20-hour shifts. They sleep on cots in unheated tents. They eat K rations when they have time to eat at all. They hold the hands of dying soldiers. They write last letters for men too wounded to hold a pen. They clean wounds that are infected with gangrene. They amputate frostbitten limbs. They do everything they can to save lives in conditions that are designed to take lives. One nurse, Lieutenant Edna Mae Stamper, writes home, "I have seen things I cannot describe in a letter, things that will give me nightmares for the rest of my life. But I keep working because these men need me, because if I stop, people die. It is that simple, so I keep going, one patient at a time, one life saved at a time. That is all I can do." This is the other side of the Battle of the Bulge, not the fighting, not the tactics, not the grand strategy, but the human cost, the suffering, the dedication of medical personnel who work miracles under impossible conditions, who save thousands of lives that would otherwise be lost, who deserve more credit than they will ever receive. By late January, both sides are at the breaking point. The Americans and British are exhausted. The Germans are defeated. No one has anything left. But the fighting continues because neither side knows how to stop. Combat fatigue, what we would now call PTSD, reaches epidemic proportions. Soldiers who have been in continuous combat since December 16th simply break. They cannot function. They sit in foxholes staring at nothing. They shake uncontrollably. They cannot hold a rifle. They cry for no reason. They have nightmares when they sleep and hallucinations when they are awake. Medical officers diagnose hundreds of cases of combat exhaustion every day. Some soldiers recover after a few days of rest. Some are evacuated to hospitals in the rear. Some never recover. Some are damaged permanently by what they have seen and done. One battalion commander reports that by late January, 40% of his men are combat ineffective. Not wounded, not sick, just broken, unable to fight. He rotates them to the rear when he can, but there are not enough replacements. So the men who can still function carry the burden for those who cannot. The psychological toll extends beyond the soldiers. Officers and NCOs who have led men into battle for weeks are racked with guilt. They have given orders that resulted in deaths. They have sent men on missions that had no chance of success. They have made mistakes that cost lives. Some can live with this, some cannot. Major Richard Winters, later famous for his service with Easy Company, 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment, writes in his diary, "I am so tired, not just physically tired, tired of giving orders that kill men, tired of writing letters to families, tired of seeing my soldiers die for ground that does not matter. I keep going because I must, but I am so very tired." For the Germans, the situation is even worse. They know they are losing. They know the war is over, but they keep fighting because surrender means prison camp and desertion means execution. German military police roam behind the lines, hanging deserters from trees as an example. Stay and fight, or die. Those are the choices. Some German units simply cease to exist. Men disappear into the forest. They take off their uniforms, put on civilian clothes, try to blend into the population. Others surrender at the first opportunity, happy to be out of the war, even if it means captivity. Still others fight with desperate courage, not because they believe in victory, but because fighting is all they know how to do. By the last week of January, it is clear the battle is over. The Bulge is eliminated. The Americans have won. But the cost has been so high, the suffering so intense, that it does not feel like victory. It feels like survival. January 25th, 1945. The Battle of the Bulge is officially declared over. The front is restored. German forces have withdrawn behind the Siegfried Line. Allied forces occupy the positions they held on December 15th. 41 days of fighting. 41 days of hell. And the front is back where it started. But everything has changed. For Germany, the Ardennes offensive was the final gamble, the last throw of the dice. It has failed catastrophically. Germany has lost its mobile reserves, its fuel supplies, its most experienced troops. The panzers that might have delayed the Allied advance across Germany are destroyed. The SS divisions that might have held the Rhine are gone. There is nothing left between the Allied armies and Berlin except exhausted infantry divisions with no tanks, no fuel, and no hope. The Russians are closing in from the east. They have liberated Poland and are crossing into Germany proper. Berlin is within reach. Hitler, in his bunker, issues orders for counteroffensives that cannot possibly succeed. He screams about betrayal and cowardice while the Reich collapses around him. For America and Britain, the Bulge has been a shock. A reminder that Germany is still dangerous, still capable of inflicting terrible casualties. The easy optimism of autumn 1944. The belief that the war would be over by Christmas has been shattered. Now everyone understands. This war will be hard to the very end. Germany will fight for every inch of ground. The final battles will be as bloody as anything that has come before. But there is also confidence. America and Britain have weathered Hitler's last storm. They have taken his best punch and remained standing. The offensive that was supposed to split the Allied armies and force a negotiated peace has achieved nothing. Germany threw everything it had at the Allies and failed. Now, there is nothing to stop the final advance into Germany. Eisenhower immediately begins planning the final campaign, the crossing of the Rhine, the advance into the heart of Germany, the final destruction of Hitler's regime. All of this is now possible because Germany's mobile reserves no longer exist. Montgomery will attack in the north, crossing the Rhine near Wölzl, and driving into the Ruhr industrial region. Bradley will attack in the center, pushing through Frankfurt toward the interior. Patton will attack in the south, driving toward Bavaria and Austria. 3 massive offensives that will overwhelm the remaining German defenses and end the war. But first, the wounded must be cared for. The dead must be buried. The shattered divisions must be rebuilt. New equipment must arrive from the United States. Replacements must be trained and integrated into existing units. The logistics tail must be reorganized after 6 weeks of emergency operations. This takes time, weeks. It will be March before the Allies are ready to launch their final offensives. March before the Rhine is crossed. March before the endgame begins. But the time is well spent. The divisions that fought in the Bulge need rest. The men need time to recover, physically and mentally, from the ordeal they have endured. New tactics must be integrated based on lessons learned. Better winter equipment must be distributed. Mistakes must be corrected. And most importantly, the men need to know their sacrifice was not in vain. That the terrible weeks in the Ardennes bought something valuable, bought time, bought victory, bought the final defeat of Nazi Germany. What did the Battle of the Bulge teach the American army? What lessons were learned in blood that would shape American military doctrine for decades to come? First lesson: never underestimate your enemy. The intelligence failure that allowed the Germans to achieve complete surprise was inexcusable. Allied intelligence dismissed reports of German buildup as impossible. They concluded Germany was too weak to attack. They were catastrophically wrong. After the Bulge, intelligence assessment procedures were overhauled. Multiple independent sources were required before dismissing threat reports. Worst-case scenarios were planned for. Complacency was no longer tolerated. Second lesson: defend in depth. The American positions in the Ardennes were too thin, too linear. When the Germans broke through, there were no reserves immediately available to seal the breach. After the Bulge, American defensive doctrine emphasized depth, multiple defensive lines, reserve forces positioned to counterattack immediately. No single breakthrough could collapse the entire front. Third lesson: mobile reserves are critical. The ability to move the 101st Airborne and 7th Armored Division to threaten sectors within hours saved the battle. The ability to shift Patton's entire army 90 degrees in 3 days was decisive. After the Bulge, maintaining mobile reserves became standard doctrine. No matter how secure a front appears, forces must be held in reserve, ready to respond to the unexpected. Fourth lesson: leadership matters at every level. The defense of Bastogne succeeded because McAuliffe refused to panic. The defense of Elsenborn Ridge succeeded because battalion and company commanders made good decisions under pressure. The defeat of Paper's Kampfgruppe succeeded because junior officers and NCOs showed initiative. After the Bulge, leadership training emphasized decision-making under stress, initiative at lower levels, and the importance of morale. Fifth lesson: logistics wins wars. Germany's offensive failed primarily because they ran out of fuel. American success was built on a supply system that kept ammunition flowing even to surrounded units. After the Bulge, logistics planning became as important as tactical planning. Supply lines were protected, fuel dumps were dispersed and defended. Ammunition stocks were maintained at high levels. Sixth lesson: air power is decisive but weather dependent. Allied air superiority won the battle, but only after the weather cleared. The first week, when clouds grounded Allied aircraft, was disastrous. After the Bulge, all-weather operations became a priority. Better navigation aids, better pilot training for bad weather operations. Development of ground-based radar to guide aircraft in poor visibility. Seventh lesson, winter warfare requires special preparation. American troops were not ready for the cold. Thousands of casualties from frostbite and trench foot could have been prevented with proper equipment and training. After the Bulge, winter warfare training became mandatory for all units. Cold weather gear was stockpiled. Procedures for preventing cold weather injuries were developed and enforced. Eighth lesson, small unit actions matter. The Battle of the Bulge was won not by grand strategy, but by small units holding critical positions. The reconnaissance platoon at Lanzerath that delayed Piper for 12 hours. The defenders of Elsenborn Ridge. The paratroopers at Bastogne. After the Bulge, small unit training was emphasized. Every squad, every platoon, every company had to be capable of independent action. These lessons were not cheap. They cost 19,000 American lives, but they were learned, and they shaped how America fought wars for the next 70 years. Korea, Vietnam, the Gulf War, Iraq, Afghanistan. All of these conflicts saw American forces applying lessons learned in the snow and blood of the Ardennes in December 1944. The Battle of the Bulge delayed the Allied advance into Germany by 6 weeks. Hitler's goal was to delay it permanently, to split the Allies, to force a negotiated peace. He failed, but he did by 6 weeks. 6 weeks that allowed him to transfer troops from the west to the east. 6 weeks that allowed him to build up defenses along the Rhine. 6 weeks that allowed hundreds of thousands of German refugees to flee west ahead of the advancing Russian armies. Were those 6 weeks worth the cost? From Hitler's perspective, yes. From anyone else's perspective, no. Germany was doomed regardless. The 6-week delay did not change the outcome. It only prolonged the agony, prolonged the war, caused more deaths on all sides, allowed the Russians to advance further west, which would have profound consequences for the post-war division of Europe. On March 7, 1945, American forces captured the Ludendorff Bridge at Remagen intact, the first Allied crossing of the Rhine. Within days, entire divisions are pouring across. The last major natural barrier protecting Germany has been breached. On March 22nd, Patton's Third Army crosses the Rhine near Oppenheim. Patton typically calls Eisenhower and says, "I have crossed the Rhine," without benefit of aerial bombardment, ground smoke, artillery preparation, and airborne assistance. There is nothing to the Rhine crossing. This is vintage Patton, downplaying the difficulty. Taking a swipe at Montgomery, who was planning an elaborate set-piece crossing in the north with massive air and artillery support, but Patton's crossing works. Within 24 hours, he has an entire corps across the Rhine. On March 24th, Montgomery launches Operation Plunder, the crossing of the Rhine in the north. Massive artillery barrage, airborne drops, amphibious assaults, everything by the book. It succeeds. Within a week, Montgomery has multiple bridgeheads and is driving into the German heartland. The noose is tightening. From east, west, and south, Allied armies converge on Berlin. Resistance is sporadic. Some German units fight fanatically. Others surrender without firing a shot. The Hitler Youth and the Volkssturm, old men and boys pressed into service, die in pointless last stands. German civilians flee in terror, not from the Western Allies, but from the Russians advancing from the east. On April 12th, American forces reach the Elbe River, 60 miles from Berlin. They halt. Eisenhower has decided to let the Russians take Berlin. The city is in the Soviet zone of occupation, agreed to at Yalta. American casualties would be enormous, and politically, it makes sense to let Stalin have his prize. Let Russian soldiers die taking Berlin. American soldiers have died enough. On April 30th, Adolf Hitler commits suicide in his bunker beneath the Reich Chancellery, the man who started World War II, who ordered the Holocaust, who sent millions to their deaths, who gambled and lost in the Ardennes. He puts a pistol to his head and pulls the trigger. Germany survives him by 8 days. On May 8, 1945, Germany surrenders unconditionally. The war in Europe is over, 5 years and 8 months after it began. Millions dead, entire cities destroyed, a continent in ruins. But it is over. The soldiers who fought in the Bulge are there at the end. Those who survived. They witness the surrender. They occupy Germany. They see the concentration camps and understand finally what they were fighting against. They see the destroyed cities and the starving refugees and the utter collapse of German society. And they wonder, was it worth it? Was the cost justified? Most conclude, yes. Not happily, not triumphantly, but yes. Evil had to be stopped. Hitler had to be defeated. The alternative, a Nazi-dominated Europe, was unthinkable. So yes, it was worth it. Even the Battle of the Bulge, even the terrible casualties, even the suffering, it was worth it. Let me tell you what happened to some of the men who fought in the Bulge. General Anthony McAuliffe, the hero of Bastogne, continues to serve after the war. He commands the 103rd Infantry Division in the final campaigns in Germany. After the war, he rises to 4-star general and serves as commander of U.S. Army forces in Europe. He retires in 1956 and dies in 1975. The central square of Bastogne is named Place General McAuliffe in his honor. A Sherman tank, pierced by a German shell, sits in the square as a memorial. Lieutenant Colonel Joachim Peiper, commander of Kampfgruppe Peiper, survives the war. He is tried at Dachau in 1946 for the Malmedy massacre. 43 defendants, including Peiper, are sentenced to death. But the sentences are controversial. Questions about coerced confessions. Questions about due process. Peiper's sentence is commuted to 35 years. He is released in 1956, having served 11 years. He lives quietly in Germany, then moves to France. On July 14, 1976, Bastille Day, his house is firebombed. He dies in the fire. His killers are never found. Many suspect French resistance members who knew about his war crimes. Private Kurt Vonnegut, captured at the Battle of the Bulge, survives imprisonment in Dresden. He witnesses the firebombing of Dresden in February 1945, one of the most controversial Allied actions of the war. After the war, he becomes a writer. His novel, Slaughterhouse-Five, published in 1969, draws on his experiences as a prisoner of war. It becomes one of the most important anti-war novels in American literature. Private First Class Melvin Biddle, Medal of Honor recipient, returns to Indiana after the war. He works as a tool and die maker. He speaks to school groups about his experiences. He rarely talks about his Medal of Honor. When asked, he says, "I was just doing my job. The real heroes didn't come home." He dies in 2010, age 86. Staff Sergeant Paul Weidorfer, another Medal of Honor recipient, also returns home. He works as a cabinet maker in Baltimore. He marries. He raises a family. Like Biddle, he rarely discusses his wartime experiences. The memories are too painful. His family knows he won a Medal of Honor. They do not know the details until after his death, when they find his citation among his papers. Thousands of other veterans return home and simply try to rebuild their lives. They get jobs, they marry, they have children. They try to forget the war. Some succeed, some do not. Some have nightmares for decades. Some struggle with alcohol. Some cannot hold jobs. Some cannot maintain relationships. The term PTSD does not exist yet. The condition is called combat fatigue, or shell shock, or nervous breakdown. Whatever you call it, the symptoms are the same. Flashbacks, anxiety, depression, rage, survivor's guilt. The Veterans Administration, overwhelmed by millions of returning servicemen, does what it can. But it is not enough. Many veterans do not seek help. They think they should just get over it. They think asking for help is a sign of weakness. They suffer in silence. But many also thrive. They use the GI Bill to attend college, first in their families to do so. They buy homes with VA-guaranteed mortgages. They start businesses. They become teachers, doctors, lawyers, engineers. They build post-war America. The greatest generation, they will be called, though they never called themselves that. They were just men who did their duty and tried to build good lives afterwards. Every year, on December 16th, the survivors gather, first in large groups, then smaller as the years pass and death thins their ranks. They return to Bastogne, to the Ardennes, to the places they fought. They place wreaths at memorials. They visit cemeteries where their friends are buried. They remember. They toast absent comrades. They swap stories, sanitized now, the horror smoothed away by time. By 2024, 80 years after the battle, almost all are gone. The youngest participants would be in their late 90s now. A handful survive, men in their hundreds, living links to that terrible December. Soon, there will be none. The Battle of the Bulge will pass from living memory into history, from testimony into textbooks. The men who were there will be gone. Only their stories will remain. Today, the Ardennes Forest is peaceful. The towns destroyed in 1944 have been rebuilt. Tourists visit on holiday. Hikers walk forest trails. Life goes on, but the memory remains. In Bastogne, the Mardassin Memorial honors American soldiers who fought in the Battle of the Bulge. A massive stone structure shaped like a five-pointed star, each point representing 1 year of American involvement in World War II. The names of American units that fought in the Ardennes are inscribed on the walls. At the center, an altar and a chapel, a place for remembrance. Near Malmedy, at Bastogne Crossroads, a memorial marks the site of the massacre. 84 stones, one for each victim. Their names engraved, forever 20 years old. Forever captured in that moment of terror on December the 17th, 1944. In Henri-Chapelle, Belgium, an American military cemetery holds nearly 8,000 American dead from the European campaign. Many died in the Bulge, row after row of white crosses and stars of David, perfectly aligned, immaculately maintained, silent testimony to the price of freedom. Across the Ardennes, small memorials mark where units fought, where individuals died, plaques on buildings, monuments in town squares, Sherman tanks on pedestals, each telling a piece of the story. Every December, ceremonies are held. Belgian and Luxembourgish officials attend. American veterans, when they were alive, attended. Now their children and grandchildren come. Speeches are given in English and French and Flemish. Wreaths are laid, taps is played. The names are read. Lest we forget. Local people. Remember, too, the generation that lived through the battle, the children who hid in cellars while shells fell, are mostly gone now. But they told their children, and their children tell their children. The memory is passed down. The debt is not forgotten. When American tourists visit these memorials, they are often approached by elderly Belgians who want to say thank you. Thank you for liberating us. Thank you for defeating Hitler. Thank you for the freedom we have enjoyed for 80 years. These expressions of gratitude, genuine and heartfelt, often move Americans to tears. It is good to know that the sacrifice was not forgotten, that it mattered, that it means something still. Closing. The Long Shadow. December 16th, 1944 to January 25th, 1945. 41 days. The Battle of the Bulge, the largest land battle fought by the United States Army in World War II. Nearly 1 million soldiers engaged, over 100,000 casualties, entire towns destroyed, thousands of civilians killed. It was Hitler's last gamble, his final attempt to turn the tide, to split the Allied armies, to force a negotiated peace, to buy time for miracle weapons that never materialized. It failed, catastrophically. Within 4 months of the Bulge, Germany surrendered. Hitler was dead. The Third Reich was ashes. But the cost, dear God, the cost. 19,000 American dead. Young men who never came home, who never married, never had children, never grew old. Their families mourned them. Their communities honored them, but they were gone, forever gone. 47,000 wounded, men who carried scars, visible and invisible, for the rest of their lives. Men who woke screaming from nightmares decades later. Men who could not speak of what they had seen and done. Men who tried to forget, but never could. And for what? To restore the front to where it had been in mid-December. To regain ground that was lost and then retaken. To delay the inevitable by 6 weeks. Was it worth it? The question is unanswerable. Or rather, the answer depends on perspective. From a strategic standpoint, the Battle of the Bulge was Hitler's final mistake. It exhausted Germany's last reserves. It hastened the end of the war. It ensured that nothing could delay Allied victory. In that sense, yes, it was worth it. It shortened the war. It saved lives in the long run. From a tactical standpoint, the battle demonstrated American resilience. When hit by a surprise attack, when facing disaster, American forces did not collapse. They held, they fought, they won. Small units, cut off and surrounded, continued fighting. Commanders made good decisions under impossible pressure. Reinforcements moved with remarkable speed. The system worked, imperfectly, bloodily, but it worked. From a human standpoint, the answer is different. No battle that kills 19,000 men can ever be called worth it. No victory that leaves 47,000 wounded can ever be celebrated without reservation. The men who died did not die for grand strategy. They died in foxholes, scared and cold and far from home. The men who survived carry those memories forever. But they also know something that cannot be measured in casualties or territory. They know they faced evil and defeated it. They know they stood when it would have been easier to run. They know they did their duty. And for most of them, that is enough. Not to make the memories go away, not to erase the pain, but to give meaning to the suffering, to know it mattered. The Battle of the Bulge is many things. A military engagement, a tactical study, a logistics nightmare, a human tragedy. But above all, it is a testament to human courage, to the capacity of ordinary men to do extraordinary things when circumstances demand it, to the ability of soldiers to endure unendurable conditions and emerge, if not victorious, at least unbeaten. Winston Churchill called it the greatest American battle of the war. He was right, not because it was the biggest, not because it was the most important strategically, but because it tested American resolve in a way nothing else did. And America passed the test, bloodied, battered, but unbowed. Today, 80 years later, the lessons of the Bulge remain relevant. Never underestimate your enemy. Maintain mobile reserves. Leadership matters at every level. Logistics wins wars. Air power is decisive. Small unit actions matter. These lessons, learned in blood in the Ardennes, shaped American military doctrine for generations. But perhaps the most important lesson is simpler. Freedom is not free. It is purchased with sacrifice, with blood, with lives. The men who fought in the Bulge paid that price. They bought us 80 years of peace in Europe, 80 years without world war, 80 years of freedom for hundreds of millions of people. Was it worth it? Ask the people of Europe who have lived in freedom since 1945. Ask the children and grandchildren of Holocaust survivors who would not exist if Hitler had won. Ask the Americans who have enjoyed prosperity and security for 8 decades. They will tell you, yes, it was worth it. Not easy, not cheap, not without terrible cost, but worth it. Remember them. The men who fought in the snow and cold of December 1944. The men who died in frozen foxholes and burning tanks. The men who survived but carried scars forever. Remember what they endured. Remember what they achieved. Remember what they gave us. The Battle of the Bulge. 41 days that tested a generation. 41 days that shaped history. 41 days that we must never forget. February 1945. The Ardennes is quiet now. The battle is over. But the scars remain. Thousands of damaged vehicles litter the forest. Abandoned tanks, burned out trucks, wrecked artillery pieces. The snow is stained with oil and blood. Unexploded ordnance is everywhere. Farmers will be finding shells and mines for decades. The American divisions that fought in the Bulge are being reorganized. Some are pulled out of the line for rest and refitting. Others are preparing for the next operation, the crossing of the Rhine, the final push into Germany, the endgame. These men are different now. The green replacements who arrived in December are veterans. They have seen combat. They have killed. They have watched friends die. They are harder, more cynical, less optimistic, but also more competent, more confident. They know they can survive. They know they can win. The replacements who arrive in February to fill the ranks are even younger than the men they replace, 18, 19. Fresh from training camps in the States, they arrive asking questions. What is combat like? What should we expect? The veterans do not answer. How do you explain to someone who has never experienced it? How do you describe the sound of incoming artillery, the smell of death, The way time moves differently in combat, stretching and compressing, you cannot. So the veterans just shake their heads and say, "You will find out soon enough." And the new men do find out. In March, during the Rhine crossing, in April, during the final drive across Germany, they learn the same lessons their predecessors learned, that war is chaos and terror and boredom all mixed together, that you can go weeks without seeing combat and then experience more horror in 5 minutes than any human should endure in a lifetime, that the men beside you become closer than brothers because your lives depend on each other. That courage is not absence of fear, but continuing to function despite fear. By May, when Germany surrenders, many of these replacements are dead, killed in the final battles, just as dead as the men who died in the Bulge, just as mourned, but with even less time to build friendships, to be known, to be remembered. They arrive, they fight, they die. Sometimes in the same week. This is the grinding arithmetic of war. Casualties must be replaced. Replacements become casualties. New replacements arrive. The cycle continues until one side collapses or surrenders. Germany collapses. America does not. That is why America wins. Not superior tactics, not better equipment, just the ability to absorb losses and keep fighting. The depth of manpower and industrial capacity that allows replacing every loss, multiple times if necessary, until the enemy has nothing left. Let me tell you about the people we have not discussed much, the civilians, the Belgians and Luxembourgers who lived in the Ardennes and who found their homes turned into a battlefield. When the German offensive begins, thousands of civilians flee west. They pack what they can carry. They leave homes that have been in their families for generations. They walk or ride in carts through snow and ice, becoming refugees in their own country. Many have already been refugees once, in 1940, when the Germans invaded. Now they are refugees again. Those who cannot flee hide in cellars. They huddle in basements while shells fall and bullets fly. They pray that the fighting passes them by. Some are lucky, some are not. Houses collapse. Artillery rounds penetrate cellars. Soldiers, American and German, take shelter in homes and bring the fighting with them. In Bastogne, the civilian population is trapped inside the siege. 4,000 civilians caught between two armies. They share what little food they have with American soldiers. They tend to wounded in their homes. They endure the same deprivation, the same cold, the same terror as the soldiers. When the Germans bomb the town on Christmas Day, civilians die alongside soldiers. One Belgian woman, Renée Lemaire, the nurse we discussed earlier who died on Christmas Eve, is later honored as a hero. The Belgian government awards her medals posthumously. The American government does the same. There is a square named after her in Bastogne, a memorial, but she is dead. 23 years old, killed trying to save wounded soldiers in a war that was not hers. When the battle ends and refugees return to their homes, many find only ruins. Entire villages are destroyed, houses burned, churches collapsed, farms devastated. Fields are minefields that cannot be farmed. Wells are contaminated. Livestock is dead or stolen. Everything they owned is gone. The Belgian and Luxembourg governments, with American assistance, begin reconstruction immediately. Temporary housing is erected. Food is distributed. Money is provided to rebuild. But you cannot replace what was lost. Family heirlooms, photo albums, the accumulation of lifetimes, gone in a few weeks of fighting. The psychological toll is immense. Children who experienced the battle, who hid in cellars while shells fell, who saw dead bodies in the streets, who watched their homes burn, carry those memories forever. Some develop what we would now call PTSD, nightmares, anxiety, fear of loud noises, an entire generation traumatized. But they survive, they rebuild, they move forward. Because what choice do they have? You cannot change the past. You can only work with what remains and try to build something better. So they rebuild their towns, they restore their churches, they plant their fields. They have children and tell them stories about the terrible winter of '44, so the memory is not lost. And they are grateful to be alive, grateful to be free, grateful to the American soldiers who liberated them. Twice now, once in '44, once in '45, and who died for that freedom. Every year they honor that sacrifice. Every year they remember. 80 years later, historians still debate aspects of the Battle of the Bulge, Questions that may never be fully answered. Could the Germans have won? No, not really. Even if they had reached the Meuse, even if they had captured Antwerp, they could not have held it. They lacked the fuel, the supplies, the air power. The offensive was doomed from the start. But Hitler believed miracles were possible. He had seen them before, France in 40, Russia in 41. He thought he could pull off one more. He was wrong. Could Allied intelligence have detected the German buildup? Maybe. There were clues, warnings, reports that were dismissed. But the Germans also did an excellent job of concealment. Radio silence, nighttime movements, deception operations. Would better analysis have revealed the threat? Perhaps. But hindsight is 20/20. At the time, with the information available, the judgment that Germany could not attack seemed reasonable. Should Montgomery have moved faster to close the bulge? This is a contentious question. American commanders, particularly Patton, believed Montgomery was too slow, too cautious, that he allowed thousands of Germans to escape who should have been trapped and destroyed. Montgomery argued that hasty attacks would have resulted in excessive casualties, and that methodical operations were necessary given the terrain and weather. Both have valid points. The truth is probably somewhere in between. Was the defense of Bastogne the turning point? Bastogne gets most of the attention, but Elsenborn Ridge and St. Vith were equally important. All three anchored the defense. All three bought time. Bastogne is famous because of the siege, because of the nuts story, because it is dramatic. But wars are not won by single battles or single decisions. They are won by the cumulative effect of thousands of small actions, most of which history forgets. Should the Malmedy perpetrators have been executed? After the war, all death sentences from the Malmedy trial were commuted. No one was executed. This remains controversial. Supporters argue that the confessions were coerced, that the trials were flawed, that clemency was appropriate. Critics argue that war criminals got away with murder, that justice was not served. The truth is that post-war justice is always complicated. The victors judge the vanquished. Standards are applied unevenly. Politics interferes. Perfect justice is impossible in imperfect circumstances. These questions will continue to be debated by historians. Books will be written. Conferences will be held. New documents will be discovered. But the fundamental story remains unchanged. Germany attacked. America defended. Germany was defeated, at terrible cost to all sides. December 16th, 1944 to January 25th, 1945. 41 days. The Battle of the Bulge, the largest land battle fought by the United States Army in World War II. Nearly 1 million soldiers engaged, over 100,000 casualties, entire towns destroyed, thousands of civilians killed. It was Hitler's last gamble, his final attempt to turn the tide, to split the Allied armies, to force a negotiated peace, to buy time for miracle weapons that never materialized. It failed, catastrophically. Within 4 months of the Bulge, Germany surrendered. Hitler was dead. The Third Reich was ashes. But the cost, dear God, the cost. 19,000 American dead. Young men who never came home, who never married, never had children, never grew old. Their families mourned them, their communities honored them, but they were gone, forever gone. 47,000 wounded, men who carried scars, visible and invisible, for the rest of their lives. Men who woke screaming from nightmares decades later. Men who could not speak of what they had seen and done. Men who tried to forget, but never could. And for what? To restore the front to where it had been in mid-December. To regain ground that was lost and then retaken. To delay the inevitable by 6 weeks. Was it worth it? The question is unanswerable, or rather, the answer depends on perspective. From a strategic standpoint, the Battle of the Bulge was Hitler's final mistake. It exhausted Germany's last reserves. It hastened the end of the war. It ensured that nothing could delay Allied victory. In that sense, yes, it was worth it. It shortened the war. It saved lives in the long run. From a tactical standpoint, the battle demonstrated American resilience. When hit by a surprise attack, when facing disaster, American forces did not collapse. They held. They fought. They won. Small units, cut off and surrounded, continued fighting. Commanders made good decisions under impossible pressure. Reinforcements moved with remarkable speed. The system worked, imperfectly, bloodily. But it worked. From a human standpoint, the answer is different. No battle that kills 19,000 men can ever be called worth it. No victory that leaves 47,000 wounded can ever be celebrated without reservation. The men who died did not die for grand strategy. They died in foxholes, scared and cold and far from home. The men who survived carry those memories forever. But they also know something that cannot be measured in casualties or territory. They know they faced evil and defeated it. They know they stood when it would have been easier to run. They know they did their duty. And for most of them, that is enough. Not to make the memories go away, not to erase the pain, but to give meaning to the suffering, to know it mattered. The Battle of the Bulge is many things: a military engagement, a tactical study, a logistics nightmare, a human tragedy, but above all, it is a testament to human courage, to the capacity of ordinary men to do extraordinary things when circumstances demand it, to the ability of soldiers to endure unendurable conditions and emerge, if not victorious, at least unbeaten. Winston Churchill called it the greatest American battle of the war. He was right. Not because it was the biggest, not because it was the most important strategically, but because it tested American resolve in a way nothing else did. And America passed the test, bloodied, battered, but unbowed. Today, 80 years later, the lessons of the Bulge remain relevant. Never underestimate your enemy. Maintain mobile reserves. Leadership matters at every level. Logistics wins wars. Air power is decisive. Small unit actions matter. These lessons, learned in blood in the Ardennes, shaped American military doctrine for generations. But perhaps the most important lesson is simpler. Freedom is not free. It is purchased with sacrifice, with blood, with lives. The men who fought in the Bulge paid that price. They bought us 80 years of peace in Europe, 80 years without world war, 80 years of freedom for hundreds of millions of people. Was it worth it? Ask the people of Europe who have lived in freedom since 1945. Ask the children and grandchildren of Holocaust survivors who would not exist if Hitler had won. Ask the Americans who have enjoyed prosperity and security for 8 decades. They will tell you, yes, it was worth it. Not easy, not cheap, not without terrible cost, but worth it. Remember them. The men who fought in the snow and cold of December 1944. The men who died in frozen foxholes and burning tanks. The men who survived but carried scars forever. Remember what they endured. Remember what they achieved. Remember what they gave us. Remember the medics who ran into fire to save wounded. Remember the tankers who fought outnumbered against superior armor. Remember the artillerymen who fired until their guns glowed red. Remember the engineers who cleared mines and built bridges under fire. Remember the supply troops who drove trucks through blizzards to bring ammunition and food to the front. Remember the pilots who flew in terrible weather to drop supplies to Bastogne. Remember every man who did his job, quietly, without recognition, because it needed to be done. Remember the civilians, the Belgians and Luxembourgers who sheltered soldiers, who shared what little they had, who died alongside the men fighting to liberate them. Remember Renée Lemaire and thousands like her who sacrificed everything. Remember that this was not ancient history. This was 80 years ago. Within living memory, barely. The youngest survivors are in their late 90s now. Soon there will be none left who remember. The Battle of the Bulge will become like Gettysburg or Waterloo, studied by historians but beyond living memory. No one will remain who can say, I was there, I saw it, I survived it. That is why we must remember, why we must tell these stories, why we must visit the memorials and read the books and watch the documentaries. Because when the last veteran dies, the responsibility falls to us, to remember for them, to honor their sacrifice, to ensure that what they endured is not forgotten. The Battle of the Bulge, Hitler's last gamble, America's greatest test, 41 days that changed history, 41 days of courage and sacrifice and horror, 41 days we must never forget. In the Ardennes, today the forest is peaceful, children play where soldiers died, tourists visit memorials and take photographs. Life continues, but beneath the peace, the memory remains. In the soil are still fragments of metal, Occasionally, a farmer plowing his field uncovers a shell or a mine and must call the bomb disposal squad. The war is not entirely gone. It lingers. A ghost, a memory, a warning. War is hell. Sherman said it. The men of the Bulge lived it. We must remember it, not to glorify war, not to make it romantic, but to understand the true cost, to know what we ask when we send young men into combat, to appreciate the sacrifice of those who answer that call. They were young men, teenagers and 20-year-olds. They should have been in college or starting careers or falling in love. Instead, they were in foxholes in Belgium, freezing and fighting and dying. They did not choose this. They were called, they answered, they served, they sacrificed. We owe them everything, our freedom, our prosperity, our peace. We live in the world they bought for us. The least we can do is remember, the very least. So remember them. When you visit Bastogne or walk through an American cemetery in Europe, when you see a documentary or read a book about World War II, when December 16th comes around each year, remember them. Speak their names, tell their stories, keep their memory alive. They were ordinary men who did extraordinary things. They were scared kids who became heroes. They were human beings who faced the worst humanity can produce and remained human. They deserve to be remembered. The Battle of the Bulge, December 1944. The darkest December, the coldest winter, the longest battle, the highest price, but also courage, sacrifice, victory, freedom. Remember it, honor it, never forget it.